This is Digital Perspectives with Brad Kimes. Subscribe for new content notifications. Now, here's Brad Kimes. Come on in.
Welcome back to the show, everybody. You can follow me on Twitter at BackupBradleyAbove at the top of the screen, and everything that we're talking about here today. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button when you come in. Why is the XRP price low? Well, we're going to talk about it today, and I don't want you to listen to me when I say it, but I want you to listen to Chris Larsen when he really lays it out and makes the case, and so many other things. Let's go ahead and get these numbers in right now. Right now, Bitcoin is $10,613.24. Ethereum is $337.66. XRP is 24 cents, 0.2445, 11 billion plus market cap. 24-hour volume is down almost 0.5%, and the 24-hour volume number 1.4 billion plus, and the total circulating supply currently right now is 45,162,000,000. Those are your numbers. So here we go. Let's go ahead and get into this. We start with this from Michael Val 5 links today. The four firms at the center of the report, Apple, Google, Facebook, and Amazon, have been in hot water with Congress for some time, but while the tone of recent conversations is punitive towards those firms, the antitrust subcommittee looks for new legal tools to rein in the four big conglomerates. And you know what? I have to speak on this. I have dealt with Amazon, I have dealt with Facebook, and I have dealt with Google, which owns YouTube, in the regard of doing business. And I've dealt with Apple in regard of doing business. And when these businesses, these companies get so enormous that they lose that human element where you have to deal with submitting emails or submitting or looking through an FAQs page for their main resource of dealing with any situation, you're too big. You're too big. And look, you can make all the money you want, but you got to break these companies up. That's how I see it. Now, you can take issue with that. The libertarian in me is going, what are you saying? Well, I'll tell you what I'm saying. I've dealt with these entities, and it is flawed to a high order. I'm actually dealing with one of these entities right now, and it's absolutely a nightmare to deal with these people, knowing that you don't have a real person to talk to directly on a phone to really deal with your business versus their platform, and it's quite frustrating. So anyway, we will keep an eye on that. Antitrust laws, I go back to, was it Roosevelt? So I mean, it's a big deal. I think you have to at some point address these companies for getting so big. And here's the other thing. I think the timing is not a coincidence. They understand that everything is about to go digital, and I think they understand that the acceleration from the pandemic as well as going digital is going to blow these companies up even bigger than they already are. So I think they're trying to figure out how to deal with this and what to do about it. So we're going to keep an eye on that because these are traditional market companies here. We want to know what's going on. Now let's take a step back into the crypto world. Arthur Hayes will be stepping down as the CEO of 100X, the company operating the popular cryptocurrency derivatives platform BitMEX, effective immediately. I think we can also start calling it BitMess because it's a mess. So, there is that. The wild, wild west is over. Some people are having trouble really struggling with that idea and that notion, but it's over. And we just saw an article that I covered yesterday about how 75 exchanges, which I wasn't even aware of, but 75 exchanges around the world have gone away in one way for one reason or another. I think this is the next growth period of an emerging market when you see these things happen. Either it's a lack of capitalization or they couldn't rise up to the framework, the regulatory guidelines, whatever the case may be. I think you're seeing a weeding out in the space, and that is healthy. actually. So, yeah, and I don't think we're done there either, because I think we also see some of these traditional firms, legacy firms, come into this space and begin to buy up some of these exchanges and say, hey, you did a really nice job. Instead of us building something from the ground up, how about we just purchase you? Right. And that is a very natural growth step too. And I think we're in that moment as well. So, all right. So moving on here, there's another great researcher in this space, Matthew Linai, Bank of Korea to begin testing distribution of digital currency October 2020. So we want to keep an eye on this because we know that China has already pushed forward with their digital currency. And we know now that Bank of Korea is beginning testing and distribution of their digital currency this month. This is that incentive from the world that really, really impresses upon the U.S., which is the largest economy here, has to get in this game to the level or beyond where we're seeing China and Korea. And I think it goes back to the conversation we've heard Brian Brooks say quite a few times already at this point, that he sees the ability for the U.S. to leapfrog to the front of this fourth industrial revolution when you can get the regulatory framework right and the addition and the use of stable coins and eventually CBDCs in this market. And then you have these on and off ramps that really get people, the masses, not retail speculators. We're already used to it. I'm talking about just everyday consumers starting to get used to the idea of using these digital dollars, which they're kind of used to some of that in a front facing of their app. You know, they're used to the Venmos and the PayPals. What we need now is just them to understand that this is happening on a new system with a new issuance on a blockchain. And honestly, they don't really need to understand that. They just need to have confidence in the system that their dollar is their dollar. So we'll keep an eye on all of these things as well as the world moves forward. Look, if there's one saving grace in all of this, with the U.S. lawmakers not getting it done yet, I think the saving grace is that the world doesn't need the U.S.'s approval to move forward with this innovation in tech. And that's where you're going to, I think, at the end of the day, that's where you're going to see the U.S. respond. So let's keep moving here. But really, I want to see the U.S. continue support innovation in this space because I do see other countries coming in and starting to potentially take the lead. Just like we talked about here, blockchain startup Ripple has shined a spotlight on what can happen when there's a lack of clear regulatory framework in which crypto can operate. And it's absolutely right. CFTC chairman says, I want to see the U.S. lead in blockchain technology. What I wanted to point out about this is that you think about Heath Tarbert, the CFTC chairman. You think about Brian Brooks, right? You think about the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. You think about FinCEN, which in 2015 has already given a decision that XRP is a virtual currency and that Ripple is allowed to go sell it. So, and use it. So the reality is that I don't know what agencies are left to hear from, whether it's the Treasury directly or the Federal Reserve or FSOC. But I would expect all three of those at some point to have something to say about all of this. And we'll talk about that more in just a second. 1 second. Okay, so now let me get this other page opened up for us here. And this moves into the travel rule protocol because as the CFTC chairman and all the other regulatory agencies and the SEC, I forgot to add the SEC. That's what I was thinking of. So SEC, OCC, CFTC, they're all right there. Even the House has passed a trifecta bill with three different blockchain cryptocurrency bills tucked in one through the House, now headed to the Senate here. The winds of change are in the sails of blockchain and crypto, okay? The regulatory winds are in our favor. And I think it's great that Chris Larsen expresses his frustration and that we need this now. And I think it's so time appropriate for sure that he's expressing that we need this now. And there is a huge call to action to get this done. And I believe with people in Congress like Tom Emmer and Warren Davidson and Darren Soto and others that are supporting all of this, even French Hill, Representative French Hill, who's called for a cryptocurrency payment rail in a congressional hearing recently as well. So moving from that, let's talk about this. Travel Rule Protocol, which is a working group favored by banks and traditional financial institutions and focused on bringing crypto in line with global anti-money laundering standards, has released their first version of its API. This is huge because the group is backed by Ing Bank, Fidelity, Standard Chartered. I mean, these are not corner stores, ladies and gentlemen. These are not corner stores. This just in, this just in. That's a bit of a big deal because this allows all of the participants to easily get into the system and be at the compliance level right out of the gate. That is enormous. So if anybody comes out and says, hey, we're a bank and we don't know anything about this stuff. Well, hey, just install this API and run all your transactions through this and we're here and you're compliant right out of the gate. And that's what really this is about, the ease of use, the ability for everyone to take up the system. We just heard Christine Lagarde yesterday encourage everyone in the EU from her position as the president of the European Central Bank to take up the system. It's no different here, what you're seeing here. And this is all about regulatory framework and compliance. Ripple co-founder, shout out to Joni Gilbronson. And the last one there was Michael Val 5 Links. And shout out to XRP Crypto Wolf. Ripple co-founder, XRP price is not tied to on-demand liquidity. Now this I want to go down into because if you're wondering why the price is low, well, Chris Larsen's about to tell you. Don't believe me when I say it, but let's listen to what he says. CNF reported today Chris Larsen, CEO Ripple, spoke at the LA Blockchain Summit about a possible exodus of Ripple from the U.S. and Cold War between China and the U.S. on financial technology of the future for the XRP community. However, Larsen's statements about the XRP token on-demand liquidity may have been very interesting as well. Larsen expressed his opinions that the investors should not expect ODL to influence the price of XRP. According to Ripple's co-founder, the value of XRP is much more strongly correlated to Bitcoin and Ethereum rather than Ripple's ODL projects are currently determining it. If you look at the XRP ledger, XRP, the decentralized digital currency, most of what happens in that ecosystem is really correlated with Bitcoin and Ethereum. It's like $100 billion trading per year, let's say. The vast majority is connected with what's happening in the overall market, and it's being driven by all the things that drive Bitcoin and Ethereum. Is it a store of value? Is it maybe just holding it as something that we value in digitized, globalized future? Is it speculation? That's all just happening in its own economic reality, completely separate from what Ripple is focused on. That's right, because ODL is about really creating those liquidity pools, the ability for all of these large players of the world to participate in this system, to have access to liquidity, to be able to source their payments for cross-border, no matter what the situation. What he's really pointing to here is that it's really correlated to Bitcoin and Ethereum because it's really a speculator market, is what he's saying. It's still retail driven. Yeah. And that's absolutely accurate. And that's why he's pounding the ground and telling you in the blockchain summit that, hey, we're even thinking about relocating our headquarters so we can go somewhere that's more friendly for cryptocurrency and blockchain, right? A more friendly jurisdiction. Because the truth is that the price is not being driven by use case utility. Utility is not driving the price. In fact, I believe that's why Chris is upset. He's upset and expressing that frustration, or I should say, because the banks aren't going to get off of the sidelines and use this until they have 100% clarity on what this asset is and how it's understood and where the liability and the accountability in using this is. It must be clearly defined for them. And because banks understand the relationship with regulators better than any of us, They're not about to put the cart before the horse and say that they're prepared to use it until they get such clarity from either Congress or regulators. So at the end of the day, the regulatory winds have been in the sails for XRP and Ripple itself. But what I do understand is that maybe we still need to hear from the Treasury. Maybe we still need to hear from FSOC. Maybe we still need to hear from the Fed. After all, they did have the Faster Payments Task Force, right? We haven't heard much from them since, except for the fact that they want to develop their own CBDC and they could be ready by 23 or 24. Well, that isn't fast enough. And that really comes down to the public-private relationship, which we'll talk about in a second. While CBDCs can certainly help to make international payments faster and cheaper, they cannot be seen as a universal cure to cross-border frictions. Even bankers see that a CBDC will still need a universal bridge asset, and that's when XRP will come in. Well said, XRP Crypto Wolf. All right, so looking at this Cybos 2020 here, what percentage of cross-border payments could be made in CBDCs? This is interesting here because when asked what proportion of cross-border payments would be conducted using CBDCs in 5 years' time, the majority said less than 5%. That's interesting. Attendees to the session, however, fairly bullish about the future of CBDCs, with 43% stating that they will see widespread adoption in the next 5 years. Another 43% said they would take off within 10 years, while an extremely optimistic 14% said they would do so within the next year. Asked about the relevance of CBDCs to their market, 57% attendees said that they were absolutely relevant, and 43% said they may be so. So, while CBDCs can certainly help and make international payments faster and cheaper, they cannot be seen as a universal cure of the cross-border frictions, according to Franz, head of the interbank relations at Societe Generale. So, you still need to think about the limitations of FX and non-harmonized AML regulations, which would remain even when using CBDCs, he said. Now, interestingly enough here, you get into this part here where much of the discussion of the session centered around support that central banks would require from private sector to distribute CBDCs and facilitate addressing the aforementioned concerns. Now here, Scott Hendry, Senior Director of Financial Technology at the Bank of Canada, agrees with this, saying the private and public sectors need to work together to find the optimal framework. It's absolutely true, and it's not any different with the Fed, right? So the Federal Reserve has the same issue in front of it. And do not forget, and I think, is this... Okay. This is where we want to go next. So, Deputy Treasury Secretary, and yesterday I thought they were talking about Mnuchin, but there's a Deputy Treasury Secretary that has a very similar name, and it's Justin Muzinich. And Justin Muzinich happened to say, while this conversation was going on, Deputy Treasury Secretary Justin Muzinich, speaking to the Atlantic Council during a digital seminar on transatlantic economic relations, said that the administration is studying a potential central bank digital currency tied to the dollar, alongside the Federal Reserve, the U.S. Central Bank. It is something we're studying. This is really a decision which sits as much with the Fed as it does with the Treasury. Yeah. Look, when you want to know why XRP price is low, it's not a hard conversation. Chris Larsen lays it out. You know, ODL is about building liquidity. There is a lack of utility because of lack of clarity that we need from the United States. It is clear that we're talking about decentralized digital assets. It is clear that we're talking about a globe, the whole planet here, in the fact that, you know, there are certain countries like Singapore, Switzerland, the UK, right, that are way more advanced on how they see these things and how they can work within the system. However, there is a real reason. Think of this for a moment. If Japan doesn't need the U.S.'s approval, if Switzerland doesn't need the U.S.'s approval, if the U.K. doesn't need the U.S.'s approval, then why haven't they started using it in full yet? Why hasn't it gone in bloom or in mass around the world other than the United States as of yet? That's the part that makes me feel like, because I know that those countries don't need our permission, but yet they haven't jumped out of the gate yet. I know China's trying to, but I think everybody understands that nobody wants China running the new digital world. I can tell you that. That's not a tough sell. But the reality is that for some reason, the world is still waiting, because they could launch and start moving these things. And I think one of the greatest reasons for that is because the central banks around the world are not just siloed islands. What they do affects the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, because they're all joined together directly and indirectly. And that's a huge part of this. And that's why I think we come back to the Fed and FSOC and the Treasury. And let's not forget that the Federal Reserve can also deem something systemically important financial market utility, just like the FSOC can, because of the Dodd-Frank Act. So don't forget that, because that could happen to RippleNet or the XRP ledger per se, So this is a very interesting time, and I would remind everybody that the reason the price is low is because we don't have utility driving the price, which would mean that they are sourcing liquidity through ODL. That's my point for the day here, and that's where I'm going to leave it. Hit that like and subscribe, ladies and gentlemen. Things are heating up. They really are. Make sure you pay attention to this market. Things are changing every day, but the regulatory wins are in the XRP sales. All right, that's going to do it for me, ladies and gentlemen. Hit the like and subscribe. Share with somebody you know. Leave a comment below. I'll catch all of you in the next one. And make sure you check out the links in the description box and in the comments section. There's a lot of really great stuff that we have for you in case it's something you may want or need. All right, catch you on the next one.